Spinoza's paradox is a thought experiment by the 17th century philosopher Benedict de Spinoza. It's sometimes called Spinoza's demon or the mind's eye demon. The idea is that there are two people, one who feels no emotions at all, and another who feels many different emotions, like anger, sadness, joy, and fear. Now, before we get into the paradox, let's clear up a couple of potential objections. Maybe the person who feels no emotions can feel pain, fear, and anxiety when they see a bear charging towards them, but they don't do anything about it. A life of total peace and tranquility is better than a life full of suffering, rage, and despair. But Spinoza's paradox turns on our intuitive understanding of what it means to be an individual human being. Even God, he said, should be understood as an infinite collection of attributes, each of which is an individual in itself. And it's the same with people. We're each a collection of emotions and states of mind that make up who we are. You might say that you can easily imagine what it's like to not be yourself. Just imagine what it would be like to live someone else's life, like the life of a rock, a tree, a planet, or a person born in a completely different time and place. But Spinoza would argue that you're still only imagining what it's like to be something particular, like a particular tree or a particular planet. If we feel no emotions, then we'll always want what we don't have, which is an emotional life. And if we have an emotional life, then we'll always want what we don't have, which is an unemotional life. This means that neither the person with emotions nor the person without emotions can ever be satisfied. And this is why Spinoza concluded that the person with no emotions has the better life. Not because they're never sad or scared or frustrated, but because they can't ever want what they have, whereas the person with emotions can. There's no such thing as the life of a tree in general, because trees aren't individuals. They're just a collection of particular individual trees. Similarly, there is no such thing as the life of a person born in a completely different time and place, because there are infinite ways that a person could be born in a completely different time and place. And because we're individuals, we each have a nature. And this raises a problem for our original question, which is whether a life of no emotions is better than a life of many emotions. If we want a life full of love, friendship, joy, and fun, then clearly Alex doesn't have the better life. On the other hand, if we want a life of total safety, security, and peace, then maybe Alex does have the better life. But how can we possibly say that one of these lives is better than the other? Well, we can't. Alex's life is better if we want a life without emotions, and Ben's life is better if we want a life with emotions. But this means that we can't say that either one of these lives is better in itself, because all we can ever do is imagine what it would be like to not have emotions by imagining what it's like to be someone else who has different emotions. It follows that the only way we can answer our question is by making a comparison between two particular people. Say Alex and Ben. One of them feels no emotions, and the other feels many different emotions. But how can we possibly say that one of these lives is better than the other? Each of us tends to act in certain ways and to pursue certain ends because of the particular way that we've been formed by our past experiences and relationships. That is, what makes us us? Well, the answer seems to be our emotions. What distinguishes us from robots and artificial intelligence is our ability to feel things like love and hate, joy and sorrow, hope and fear. These emotions make us vulnerable, but they also make us human. They just stand there and scream. In that case, the person who doesn't feel emotions would certainly have the better life. Well, it means that you're remade up of all the unique properties that come together to form you as a particular thing. This includes your body, mind, history, experiences, and relationships. This means that we can't even conceive of abstract ideas like justice, beauty, or goodness, independently of the particular instances that we've experienced. And this applies to our own nature too. Because we're individuals, all we can ever know about our own nature is in relation to particular things. This means that we can never know what it's like to not be ourselves, to not have our particular nature, because we don't have any concepts that could describe such a thing. Being an individual means that you have a particular nature. But what determines this nature? According to Spinoza, it's your emotions. It's the unique way that you respond to the world around you. Your individual nature is determined by all of the causes that have led you to become who you are right now, because they'd be much more likely to run away from the mare. And you might think that being more likely to survive is reason enough to conclude that the emotionless person has the better life. But this isn't really what Spinoza was getting at. He wasn't interested in the likelihood that you'll survive a bear attack. Rather, he wanted to know whether a life without emotions is better from the point of view of the person living it. First, some of you might be thinking, what about the difference between feeling an emotion and being conscious of feeling an emotion? For example, someone who has no emotions, but knows that they have no emotions, might seem to be in exactly the same position as someone who does experience emotions. If both of them can reflect on their emotional states, how could one be better off than the other? Well, when Spinoza originally presented his paradox, he did assume that both people were conscious of their emotional states. However, I don't think that's necessary for the thought experiment. Even if only the person with emotions is conscious of those emotions, they still seem to be in a worse position. Imagine that every time you felt joy, fear, or any other emotion, a bee landed on your nose. Would you trade places with someone who never experiences those feelings? Well, maybe not. So let's keep going. You may think it's obvious which of these two people leads a better life. Surely it's the person who experiences positive emotions like joy, love, and friendship, while avoiding negative ones like fear, anger, and grief. But according to Spinoza, it's actually the emotionless person who has the better life. And this is why. Welcome to this channel, dedicated to exploring ideas that matter. Another thing to clear up is the difference between feeling an emotion and acting on it. So far, it seems like the answer has to be no. But what does it mean to be an individual? Now, Spinoza argued that everything in the universe is best understood as a collection of individuals. But here's where things get interesting. Spinoza claimed that the only kind of knowledge we have of anything is knowledge of individuals. Now, you might think that this is obviously false. This means that the only way we can ever imagine what it is like to not be ourselves is by imagining what it is like to be a particular other thing. Well, it depends on what sort of life we want. And this is where Spinoza's paradox comes in. He argued that we always want what we don't have. Thanks for watching.